Why is promiscuity becoming more acceptable? This can offend a lot of people. But if we're looking at this strictly from how we evolved biologically and culturally, we have to look at ourselves as animals and what is different between men and women.
Trying to do, right? And then he doesn't call or text you or snap or whatever it is. And then you get hardened by that.
A clinical experience, because I've worked with many very successful women that have been devoted to their career. Boys can't be promiscuous just like girls should not be.
Well, is that how it is though in the house? Are you kind of like, oh, is it okay if the guys are out there doing it?
There's some hookups have always been present, but we have called them different things. Like even, with married people or even a relationship, people have affairs. I mean, that's almost like hookup culture. But what we're really talking about, why is promiscuity becoming more acceptable?
How did we get here?
How did
the hookup culture get to where we're at now?
Well, I think there's like, you've done some research on all the socio-cultural reasons why hookup culture has evolved. What have you found? I'll talk about it from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay. So I found that and it makes sense, like in the 1920s, there was sort of a shift because with the evolution of the automobile industry and also drive-in movie theaters and things like that, then people were not just coming to your house to court you with your parents there and all of that. People were out, kids, teenagers, and young adults were out, and so promiscuity sort of started to take shape that way, and then the hookup culture really sort of boosted during the 1960s with the sort of sexual revolution with the widespread availability of birth control and feminism. So there was really a shift then as well, and it's just sort of become very acceptable since then to engage in just this hookup culture situation.
And I guess there's been more of a blend where in the past, a woman's reputation would be heavily tarnished if she was known to be promiscuous, and if a guy was promiscuous, he was somehow emboldened and his status increased, right? With them. So from an evolutionary perspective, and I know this can offend a lot of people, but if we're looking at this strictly from how we evolved biologically and culturally, we have to look at ourselves as animals and what is different between men and women biologically. And a lot of this boils down to the minimal requirement to invest in a child, okay, like when you're mating. And for a man, all it takes is an act. A woman, the minimum investment is 9 months to carry that child. And she has 400 to 500 eggs that will be released over a lifetime, in compared to 200 to 400 million sperm with each ejaculation.
200 to 400 million?
400 million sperm with each ejaculation.
Wow.
Okay, with that teaspoon of ejaculate. So there is a different investment for each release. So I am biologically designed to it's a shotgun approach, be less selective, try to capture not capture, but capture as many eggs as possible, inseminate as many eggs as possible. Where the woman that has 400 over a lifetime, we always joke with the kids that it's this gold, you got to protect your golden egg, but truly you have 400 golden eggs. So a woman biologically is more selective in who she's going to give access to her eggs.
Right, she has one.
So, and this is why then culturally, what happens is in cultures we're protecting women, protecting the eggs,
is this
making
why it's
sure they're
when
very
the ship
selective.
Is going down, it's save the women.
Save
and
the women and children, yes. But this is why, as culturally, that then women are somehow shamed if they are freely giving out their eggs, right? Versus a man, with status, you get access to more eggs. So,
Right.
but now things
But
have
there has been a
shifted.
shift.
There's been a shift.
Yeah.
But, today, promiscuity is not healthy, because, you are opening yourself to disease also.
Well, physically
Physically
unhealthy,
and
mental,
emotionally, we
yeah.
know there's a lot
some
of
mental health,
negatives
yeah.
with it. But certainly, it is normal to try out people and hook up with people as you're growing up to find out what you like and who's
who you like.
compatible.
Right.
You just have to be careful, right, and understand the potential impact. What has happened though, so there are long-term mating strategies and short-term mating strategies. And, a long-term strategy for women, it used to be kind of to hold out and to show that you're not promiscuous. And some people may say that is arcane.
Right.
Okay. But there's still some remnants of that, right? Where you want to be wined and dined, taken care of,
But how do
honored.
women? How do? Yeah.
But now, like in colleges,
It's not about being wined and dined.
No.
It's about like getting to know somebody and having,
being treated well and protected
Yeah.
and
Well, nowadays I feel like it's like they're going out and hooking up, and there's like no investment on the guy's part.
Well,
he's just he's not even taking you to dinner before he didn't even.
Well, he
buy
doesn't
you
have
a
to. He just
$20
had to
dinner.
he just had to get on Tinder, and you invited him over to the house
Yeah,
for a
why?
quick hookup.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I guess that.
what's it from the literature?
What are we hoping to get from that?
Well,
Like, what is the girl hoping to get from that?
the
woman.
girl's usually trying to get a relationship.
Are
it's
they?
another strategy.
Do they think that that's going to work as a relationship?
on
and
average,
does it work?
on average, most of them are trying to get a relationship. Sometimes it works.
Yeah.
But usually it does not, because most guys are just looking to hook up.
If that's what they're doing when they're doing
if
that.
they're on Tinder, certainly it falls into a relationship. But so there's been this shift too, where women used to use the old strategy of I'm going to hold out to find a long-term mate. But now that there's more women in college than there are men, there's even more competition for
the men?
For the men. So then women use short-term strategies, which is they become more promiscuous. They hook up. And
Hoping
that is
hoping
hoping to have
that
a long-term
hookup leads to
relationship.
a relationship.
Not always,
But
very
usually it does not?
more often. Well, because guys are more often they just want to hook up.
Yeah.
Girls will say that they do, but they're really most often looking for a long-term relationship.
Nobody would feel good getting ghosted after a hookup, right?
Well, I think some guys are really hurt by it, right? But
No,
most
girls.
guys, I think most girls are hurt by it. But I think guys are hurt by it too. Like some
Yeah.
girls are.
They just don't, yeah.
Remember that song "Man Eater," right? They're just like trying to eat up those men, right? They feel no guilt by it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna blame social media. So, it's kind of like what we know from alcohol studies, that people overestimate how much their friends drink, right? Or how much drugs their friends do. So we end up overestimating how much they do, and then it almost influences our behavior. So in social media, you're only seeing like the high points, like of hookups and people getting together and things like that. And in our culture, it's even like promoting promiscuity and hooking up. So
like the movies
we're like inflating how much people do it, and then it leads to people doing it even more.
You're right.
And I
How do you feel
know
about
how
it?
devastating it is when people are like hooking up and they're left, there's a lot of regret that people have, even though I got to tell you about like the sexual regret thing, because it's really interesting that with hookups and regret, women are the ones that most often regret hooking up and getting depressed or feeling used after a hookup. And men, on the other hand, they often regret more not hooking up. So they have regret about missed opportunities. So it's just interesting about the sexes.
Okay, but I feel like with maybe it's not true, like gender, like it may not be all the time this way, but I feel like the guy like wants to hook up, and so then the girl hooks up. Or maybe they both hook up, right?
You're talking about with
But
each
then
other?
I'm just talking about in general. I feel like a lot the girl expects that maybe it's going to turn into something, and even if they like shrug it off, like, you know, I didn't expect to hear from him, I don't care or whatever. I think like deep down you kind of do,
Yeah.
right? And then he doesn't call or text you or snap or whatever it is, and then you get hardened by that, and it's not. I don't think it's
You get
good
wounded.
for your
Yeah.
mental health, because then you like go down this rabbit hole of
Well, I
feeling
mean,
bad.
but this is like-
and you've like, I don't know how you're gonna like do that and like let somebody into your like personal space like that you don't even know. I watch and I'm like, well, if they hook up, then they get ghosted by the guy. And if they don't hook up, then the guy's not paying attention to them because they're not somebody that's hooking up with them. So either way, like, you're not getting the relationship or whatever it is you're looking for.
Like, it's not a great strategy.
It's not a great strategy.
I mean, you know, I mean, there's even been studies about friends with benefits, right?
Okay,
And
yeah.
most often, I mean, it's very interesting.
Friends with
'Cause
benefits,
friends with
I don't think
benefits-
that works, right?
Well,
Does it?
Well, the thing is, like, guys will say typically that it is just friends with benefits, but a girl will say most often that it's the beginning of a romantic relationship. So, but let's
I
think
think there's
about.
a movie
but let's.
about that, and they end up falling in
Can
love.
we just talk? They did. Well, I mean, but that happens sometimes.
But see,
right?
then the
It can be a
movie is like
strategy.
making it like that's
Like, it's
going to
okay.
happen. And
But like the thing about sex, like, we are married, we have 4 kids.
Right.
Like, having a sexual relationship, and we both have had our pasts, right?
Right.
There's something like in today's culture, we minimize what sex is. I mean, and I'm not a Bible thumper, right? But it used to be about like mating, right? I mean, this is why.
well, you
I mean,
you mean like with this whole like with the feminism thing and all of this sort of stuff.
Well,
with
we're
the
minimizing
we make it like sex is no big deal.
yeah.
But really,
It's like
sex is a
shaking
big
hands.
deal.
It's like Bill Clinton in the Oval Office, right? It's no big deal, right, to be doing something like that. But actually, like, what happens biochemically
yeah.
to you
When
when you
you-
have sex with someone,
Right.
There's a whole cascading of biochemical changes. You pair bond with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is when you're having sex, you are biologically vulnerable to that person. You're like totally exposing yourself.
Right.
Which is like part of the pair bonding experience where, you know, I mean, this is why like where kissing is. I mean, you're like you're exposing yourself and you're tasting that person, you know, you're almost becoming one in some sense. But it is like a dangerous activity. And
You mean
should,
it's dangerous from like a physical,
from a
like
health
from a health
perspective,
perspective.
like you're only doing that with a special person,
with somebody that
right?
you
that you know,
know, somebody you know.
Yeah. So it's like I just don't know why we're minimizing it when you go to the doctor's office, everything is sanitized. Everybody has gloves on. You go to the dentist,
And you expect that.
There's a mask
If they
on,
didn't do that,
right?
then you'd be
It's
like, "This is weird."
yeah, well, like
right?
we worry about hygiene
That would be
in every
dirty.
other area, but then like I'm
But
gonna
then
go
I'm gonna
hook
go to a
up and I'm
bar
gonna-
and-
here, like come and you know, I mean, it's like friggin' disgusting what we do, right? What we accept. It's like this strange dichotomy.
Yeah.
So it's dangerous, and it's
Well, I don't know
and
about
there's-
dangerous, but you are exposing
potentially
yourself
dangerous.
to. You're exposing yourself to.
And
what,
it should
germs?
only be. I mean, here I am. You know, I'm a 51-year-old guy,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I mean, sex is like it's special. It should be between two.
Somebody you care
I mean,
about.
consenting adults.
Yeah,
And,
two
something
consenting
to
adults who care about each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. I mean, so parents. I mean, so the problem is that today, I mean, we rely on school systems and other people to parent our children, and sex education really begins at home. It's parents' responsibility to model this behavior and to teach their children
Yeah.
about the dangers and the psychological dangers,
The
not just the
psycho-
physical dangers, but
right.
like what happens when you have sex with someone, you give yourself
Well,
to them,
yeah.
and they ghost
Well,
you.
about having
It's
some
devastating.
self-respect and some respect
Yeah.
for other people too.
Yeah, and that boys can't be promiscuous, just like girls should not be.
Well, is that how it is though in the house? Are you kind of like, oh, is it okay if the guys are out there doing it?
There
with
is
the
some.
girls?
There's some. I'm
mean,
a
even
human
in our
being.
house, you
I'm an
can't-
animal and a human being. There's a natural There's
You don't
some
like
kind of
it if
natural
you're-
inclination.
Right.
I'm still biologically a male. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are things that just come naturally, but I tell both genders in our home not to be promiscuous.
Not that they shouldn't
You do
explore
not-
their. I mean, they need to be.
I mean, I tell the kids they have great, with great power, there's great responsibility. Spider-Man.
So
You can't just
what do you
like
tell
go
them?
share it. You can't just go share yourself with
Everybody,
whomever it is,
whoever,
even
just
though it seems fun.
right.
So there is some practice, some inherent practice that needs to occur, but
I mean, are some people are just more promiscuous than others, just naturally, or is that like a?
I mean, there's all kinds of
Sort of
theories
taught
behind that. I
thing,
mean,
or-
well, it's it's modeled, or if there's been abuse, or
Yeah,
some
because like,
people
what is
have-
trauma?
Some people,
Trauma.
well, I mean, some people have more testosterone too, and are more driven to do that. And some people are more attractive to the other sex, and then have more access also. That leads to promiscuity.
Talking to the people that are doing it, what should you go from here? How do you attract the guy without sleeping with him, as well as to the guys, what should you be looking for?
Well, I think
Yeah.
it starts at home too.
But this
like
is-
teaching your sons not to like that. That's not okay to be like,
you're
oh,
not
let me
object-
see how many girls I can hook up with, and
Yeah, or just like object.
Or
when when
objectifying
your son
women.
is like, she is so hot.
or look at
Then
her.
you're like looking at other aspects of her, like what do you like about her personality? Is
Right.
she intelligent? Tell me about her
Yes.
family.
Something where he'd have to actually get to know something about her.
Yeah, where you're shifting the focus. I mean, physical attraction is important
Of
still
course.
for both sexes. And why is that important? Because it tells us about somebody's health
Right.
too. And here we are, human beings trying to mate and breed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're naturally attracted to attractive people that have good genes,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's nothing wrong with that, but we want to divert the focus a little bit and focus on some other things. But so
And then what do we
this
tell
brings
our
up
the women?
the girls.
The-
But this is like the issue, because girls are now using this as a tactic to have a long-term relationship, and you kind of explain what's happening. And I stress the golden egg philosophy with the girls, right? You got 400 golden eggs in a lifetime. You don't want to give access to just anybody these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're always talking about the health concerns, right? The
Mental health
emotional
and-
the physical health challenges when you expose yourself to someone. But again, this is the girl or guy. So the problem is that when there's a lot of guys too, because of pornography now and social media and gaming, that a lot of these guys never even have sexual experiences.
And it wasn't there
until they're older.
Yeah.
And because they don't have the social skills, right? And then the other thing is, when all these girls are using more promiscuity as a tactic, they end up leaving a bunch of guys out of the dating market. So it's like the same guys that are hooking. There's like a select group of guys that get to hook up with all the girls, and then a large swath of men, young men, are left out of the dating market. Which is happening because they're not doing themselves any favors, because then they're relying on pornography and video games rather than putting themselves out there and working on improving themselves to be attractive to the opposite sex. With the hookup culture, they often use short-term relationships to get that long-term relationship. But the great thing is that life is a valuable teacher, because they try to use that strategy and then they get ghosted, right?
Yeah, it doesn't
So
work.
you kind
and
of
then-
explain what's happening.
Yeah.
And you have
then they
lots of
learn.
friend examples of it occurring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you have to instill the value and the trust too, that it's going to come eventually.
Eventually.
And what I say
Well,
to the
eventually
kids,
you'll pair up with some guy, or
they can be
Or-
trusted. I mean, I say guy or girls, and I know this is going to be offensive.
Men
I
or
mean,
women.
men and women, we are so impulsive until we are 30, and we don't even know. Our identities are still forming. We don't even know what we want or like. And
I think in 20 years, I think it'll be sort of better than it is now. I feel like we're at an era where like we're definitely more enlightened about things, physical and mental health, and
Yeah.
people are, taking care of themselves better than they used to in a lot of ways. And maybe that shift will, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always, even our biology, our culture, there's always like a drive for, there's always like a push-pull, a homeostasis. There's always revolution, and then there's like a return to homeostasis with new information.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see is that, again, this is like a new revolution, another revolution. And what's going to happen is there's going to be some more equality around promiscuity, where it's not okay for either sex to be promiscuous. We're going to know more about health challenges, physical and psychological, and that people are going to be, more patient and realize that they need to respect themselves more. Or, you have a series of hookups, but I mean, it's really about learning, but nobody is being overly promiscuous.
Mm-hmm.
What if it doesn't? If it doesn't get any
If it-
better, you're gonna have what happens?
Well, what are
There's
the here? Is this hookup culture leading to people not getting married and not having families and not like having this like core group that you've now created? Or is it just a phase, like a college or young people, phase that eventually it all works itself out? Like, what are the stats on what the outcomes of it are?
Yeah, I mean, the stats are still delayed. The stats are still delayed marriages, but I am anecdotally seeing younger people getting married. Today.
Younger
Like
people?
people getting married before 27,
Mm-hmm.
26.
Like-
So I don't know what the new census is going to look like, the next census.
Okay, but
So, but it looks like, that marriage continues to get delayed. So,
well, that's not a bad thing then, is it?
well, I mean, the longer you wait, the more educated you are, the better job you have, the more likely you are to stay married.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, because the longer you wait, the more you know yourself,
Then
the
you're
more
probably-
that identity is formed.
Yeah.
The better choice
Then you're probably
gonna
having
make.
less children because
Yeah.
you're older, and so you can only,
Uh-huh.
have a certain number.
You only have a certain number of eggs.
Like somebody who's like focused on their career, and so they just do the hookup because that's all they have time for, or that's all they have, like the bandwidth.
Relationships are just so important in life.
Well,
And-
that's everything. The relationships are
and
everything.
it's going to be so rich with all of these people. And
So in the hookup culture, going back to that, like relationships are really where it's at for everybody.
yeah, it is. Well, everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be cared for. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody's kind of looking for the same thing, but some people want it for a shorter amount of time.
Yeah.
Just one
At that
night.
phase of
At
their
that
life.
phase in their life, even though they're often, using it for, women are using it for more of a long-term strategy, men are not. But we all really want the same thing. We want to feel like we're part of something.